Welcome into the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of 97.9 ESPN Radio. To my left, Ira Schoffel, managing editor of Warchant.com. And to my right, Gene Williams, founder and administrator of Warchant.com. And away we go, number 2 versus number 10, Papa John Stadium. Of course, ESPN's College Game Day will be there, this game on ABC. And let's get an injury report to start things off with Ira Schoffel.
Well, obviously the big news from an injury standpoint was Derwin James, Florida State's star sophomore safety, sustained a knee injury in the second half of the Charleston Southern game. A lot of debate about whether or not he should have been in the game at that point. But anyway, he tore some cartilage in his knee, not as bad as originally thought. They thought it might have been an ACL. Tore some cartilage. The problem is nobody knows when he'll be back. It could be a couple weeks. It could be much longer. In his place, the good news is, from an injury standpoint, Nate Andrews appears to be back this week after missing the first couple of games with a calf injury he sustained in the preseason. He's a veteran senior. He's not a Derwin James, but he's played a ton of football in his first 3 years at Florida State. And is just a steadying presence. And then on the offensive line, the two questions are the two starting guards did not play this past Saturday. Kareem R., the left guard, and Wilson Bell, the right guard, did not start. And again, that's one of those we're going to have to wait to see how it goes this week, whether or not they're back. I think the indications are there's a good chance at least one of them could be back, but we probably won't know till Thursday.
Yeah, it might help one Dalvin Cook look a little bit better if you got your two guards back. We'll see. But let's get back to Derwin James for a second. Such a dynamic player, obviously, and versatile, too, and a guy that you figure, if you needed to, could act as a spy in this game for Lamar Jackson. Talk about the impact Derwin James being out for that secondary.
Well, the most obvious, you lose your most dynamic playmaker back there, the guy that can just make big plays, whether it's hitting the ball, whether it's being a ball hawk, running down guys, making big plays. I mean, you take that out of the equation, that definitely hurts in a game like this. And I also think just for the continuity of the secondary, that's been one of the bugaboos so far this season. You've seen the breakdowns, the communication hasn't always been great, and I think that's a large part because of Nate Andrews being out. You've had to move some guys around. I mean, effectively, they've only had two steady guys. It's been Derwin and it's been Marquez White. Everyone else has kind of been moved around a little bit to different positions, and I think they're adjusting that. So that takes another one out of the equation for this game, which I think is huge to be able to have that communication. The good news, as Ira said, having Nate Andrews back in the equation will definitely help there.
Certainly a guy who understands the defense, can help get folks lined up. Talk a little bit more about the impact without Derwin James out there to spy Lamar Jackson, if he was going to be used in that role, and really the matchup against Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, it's a big challenge for Florida State, especially without Derwin James, because not only do you lose a playmaker, as Gene said, but he's also one of your more physical players. I mean, everybody remembers the play, one of the highlights from last season, of Derwin James throwing aside an offensive lineman from the University of Florida. I mean, he's a physical football player, and I think if you go back to that game last year when Florida State pulled away from Louisville, is when they got very physical. They got physical with Louisville's receivers. They got physical with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. They got physical up front. And I think losing Derwin James, you lose some of that physicality, and I don't know that Nate Andrews is going to bring that.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey a year ago was certainly that guy and disruptive out on the edge and really destroyed Louisville's receivers. Very, very physical, made plays in the backfield to boot. You look at Florida State, let's get the overview here. If you think, let's evaluate Florida State through two games. And I'm curious where your heads are at with this team so far. You had the terrible, which was the first half against Ole Miss, but then the exhilarating comeback and the victory. And once they got lined up and communicated better, they looked like world beater. They held Ole Miss down to just 75 yards and 6 points in the second half. And then obviously they took care of business but suffered a setback with an injury against Charleston Southern. But your thoughts on the number 2 ranked team in the land through the first 2 weeks?
Well, I think the big positives for Florida State so far is DeAndre Francois on offense. I mean, has been better than any of us expected, and we all thought he'd be really good. I mean, I think as a consensus here, we thought DeAndre Francois would win the starting job and be a very good college quarterback. I think he's been better than we expected. He hasn't had the mistakes that we were worried about from the spring game. He's also made some really beautiful throws, shown his arm strength, and shown his willingness to run, which is a big weapon. Defensively, I think the big positive has been the takeaways and the sacks. Gene wrote about it on the site at warchant.com this week about the sack numbers and the takeaways. Granted, Charleston Southern is not great competition, but this defense is putting a lot of pressure on opposing offenses and getting those takeaways that they didn't do at all last year.
A lot of different guys getting an opportunity to play as well, and that's been fun to watch because they've recruited so well. So you showcase all of this talent, this speed, maybe a lack of experience in some areas, but it'll be interesting to see how they look this week. And also, I'm curious, I think I know where you're going to go, but red flags? Any red flags through 2 weeks?
Yeah, the weird thing is, our point out, it's hard to judge because you saw the best of Florida State and the worst in that first game. The last game, it was throw out the window because they're such a substandard opponent. But I think there's a couple red flags that have been out so far. I think Dalvin Cook, for one, and it's hard to say he's had 288 all-purpose yards in 2 games. You go, how can that be a red flag? But so at this point, you just don't see the explosiveness. And I don't know if that's the little bit of additional weight he put on, the fact that they held him out of contact quite a bit to protect him. Maybe he's not really into game speed yet. Hopefully that'll pick up. I think the other thing I mentioned earlier, the secondary breakdowns, the lack of communication there is a little disconcerting, especially going to a game like this. And finally, the offensive line has not been, we knew they were going to be better. They haven't been a whole lot better really than last year to me so far. Way too many penalties, a lot of missed assignments. But again, how much is that a function of you not had your starting guards? At least the last game you didn't have either one. And then you missed obviously Kareem Ari in the first game as well. So I don't know how much is playing to that, but those 3 things really concern me at this stage.
Knock on wood that entire offensive line is intact for this football game. They could look like a different unit. Those are talented guys that they've been missing, either one or both. So we'll see if they come back. I do know this. I mentioned it, alluded to it anyhow. Some of the young players have really impressed. Either one of you can chime in on this. For me, I'll start with special teams and the 2 young kickers that have come in and look so good. You never know what you're going to get with kickers. It's when Florida State has been elite time and again for the better part of a decade at that position, you can take it for granted that you're going to continue to get that. But you had no idea what Ricky Oguayo was going to be and Logan Tyler. And these guys look like they're going to be as good as their predecessors at this point.
It's crazy. When I do a stat wrap for my weekly wrap up from Warchant, and I don't know if you've ever seen this before, Jeff. FSU is number 2 in the nation in net punting. I don't know if I've ever seen FSU. Now, it's only week 2, and that could go down, but I mean, I don't think any of us expected that. The kickoffs have been fantastic, whether they're booting them out of the end zone or doing those pooch kicks in the corner to kind of get that position. And Ricky's been perfect. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better scenario for those guys. I mean, it's amazing what they've done. And the one other guy I'm going to throw up for a freshman that I've really been blown away by is Brian Burns. The burst that kid has off the edge right now is exciting. When he came in that second half, you saw a difference. I think you got to put him on the field more.
I know you love Brian Burns too. Probably a guy you were going to mention.
For sure. And also you love the young defensive backs, Kyle Myers, Carlos Becker, Levante Taylor. They're impressive, but there isn't a big need there. I do think there is a need at defensive end with Brian Burns. And also Dontavius Jackson is a guy who missed a lot of camp. He had an illness, had a personal issue, missed a lot of camp. Was a little bit behind those other guys, but he played a little bit in the second half yesterday, and I thought he flashed. I think Dontavius Jackson, that is a position where they need some help at linebacker.
Well, Louisville has won comfortably through their first 2 weeks, and we know they have a star at quarterback, or at least a burgeoning star at quarterback, but I don't think we know a real lot about who this team is, as they outdid 2 really overmatched teams. When we come back, we'll preview Louisville on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. It's time to take a look at Louisville, the number 10 team in all the land for Florida State on the road. College game day, of course, Papa John Stadium. You look at Louisville, they end up returning so many of their starters, including the key starter, which is at quarterback in Lamar Jackson, but their top 3 running backs, just about every one of their receiving threats came back as well. 5 offensive linemen with starting experience. 4 of their top 6 defensive linemen, 4 of their top 6 linebackers from a year ago, 6 of their top 7 defensive backs. So as young as they were a year ago is as experienced as they are now. And they run that zone read from the pistol, and you look at these numbers so far to start the year for Lamar Jackson. They're like video game numbers. 37 of 62 for 697 yards, 7 touchdowns to just 1 interception. He's rushed 32 times for 318 yards and 6 touchdowns. Here's a video of Jimbo Fisher talking a little bit about the threat that is Lamar Jackson.
Well, I mean, structurally, what he does, and they're still doing very similar things. They'll have adjustments and do things better. But, but he's progressed so much more as a player, in my opinion, with the poise and the leadership and just his passing skills and his reading. But, we've played against him, so we know what he's like, but that doesn't make it any easier. That guy's dynamic, man, in all phases of the world and how he plays. So we're going to have our hands full. We got to keep contained, but we got to pressure, and, we got to play Florida State football. We got to tackle in space, but then also, you slip up about that, and all of a sudden they're banging you up inside with inside runs and powers and stuff. So, we got to play a complete football game and be very disciplined. Have great eye control in this game.
So there's Coach Fisher talking about Lamar Jackson, the dual-threat quarterback, who at one time was actually here at Florida State for the camp. I think it was the summer after the 2013 season. How good is Lamar Jackson?
Well, I think he's a phenomenal football player, a phenomenal athlete, and he can really play quarterback. I mean, he's not the best pure passer you're going to find, but in terms of a weapon, in terms of a dominant college football player, he's up there. I mean, Florida State really contained him last year and shut him down from a running standpoint, but I don't think he knew their offense at all at that point. He really didn't start to pick up their offense, understand it, till late in the season, and then into the bowl game. He had a really impressive bowl game, and then since then, it's been like turbocharged. Now, they haven't played great competition, but the numbers are astounding. He leads the ACC in rushing and passing. He's just been phenomenal.
Yeah, through 2 games, he has been something, as I said, of a video game character. Gene, for FSU's defense, how best to slow down Lamar Jackson?
Well, it would be a miracle for Derwin James to be able to play and spy him, but that's not going to happen, obviously. I think you need to account somebody for him, and as Ira said, an incredible runner. He's averaging 10 yards a carry, 159 yards rushing a game. You have to take that out of his game, or at least limit that to some extent. You can't let him run wild. I think he's improving as a passer. He's still not a great passer. He's still a tendency to occasionally force some balls. So I think that's what you want to do. You want to be able to contain that running, make him pass a lot, and you got to hope that front 4 can put that pressure on him, whether it's Matthew Thomas, maybe Trey Marshall, one of those guys. I think one of your speedy, physical, athletic guys has to spy him the whole time to keep that running ability down.
You look at some of the other weapons in this offense. Jamari Staples, wide receiver. He's his top target so far with 9 receptions for over 200 yards. He's a big kid, 6'4". They've got another kid in running back, Brandon Radcliffe, who we saw a year ago, their top runner, averaging just under 100 yards per game. Other guys you want to take a look at for this Louisville offense beyond Lamar Jackson and those that I just mentioned.
We mentioned, Staples is the big threat. He's the guy that's leading them in every category right now, receiving. That you mentioned, a big guy. That's a big target for them. James Quick is another one. He's up there. He leads them in 28 yards per catch. That's some gaudy numbers right there. And, of course, the running back, Brandon Radcliffe, is very good, too. And he's averaging a gaudy 13.7 yards per carry. Now, some of that is a function of some very weak competition to start out with. And I think that they have not seen a front 4 like they're going to see at Florida State. But those are the main guys I'd say to watch out for in offense, besides, of course, Mr. Jackson.
It always helps out any running back if your quarterback is also a threat to run the football, and I think that he's benefited from that. The offensive line for Louisville, like I said, they got a lot of guys who had some starting experience back.
Yeah, it's one of those situations, though, where you got everybody back, but they were awful last year. Yeah. I mean, that offensive line was as bad as anybody in the ACC. They really struggled. They got him killed in some situations. Florida State really shut him down as a running back because as a runner, because the offensive line couldn't block anybody. They got some size. They average over 300 pounds. I think they only have one guy under 300 pounds, but I don't know how athletic they are, and it's really hard based on who they played so far, Charlotte and Syracuse, to know how they're going to match up against a Derek Nottie, how they're going to match up against a Josh Sweat, DeMarcus Walker, those guys. And the other part is the linebackers. Florida State is so much more athletic now at linebacker with Roderick Hoskins and Matthew Thomas than they have been the last several years, really since Telvin Smith left. And that's another thing that's going to help them against that Louisville offense.
Now, switching it to the other side of the football, Louisville's defense, they run a 3-4 that's really dependent on those down linemen, just the 3 big guys there to be able to maintain their gap integrity. You know, last year they had a lot of problems in that secondary, but they still, Todd Gransom's group, were able to field a top 25 defense. Primarily, they like to wreak havoc with their linebackers, and they got good ones in Kelsey and Devontae Fields, 2 guys that can really, really play. They lost Sheldon Rankins, big defensive lineman, to the NFL draft. I think you were saying how tough it is to judge the offensive line. I think it's tough, Ira, to judge this defense. They haven't really faced anybody that can play.
Yeah, no, you're right. But they do have some athletes. I mean, I think we definitely know they have some athletes. Drew Bailey, a defensive lineman, I think is 6'5", 285, junior college transfers, an impressive physical guy. Obviously, everybody remembers Josh Harvey Clemens from back when FSU recruited him, and then he played at Georgia, and I think he got shipped out of there pretty quickly. But they've got a lot of athletes on that side of the ball. The question is, how disciplined are they? I've watched a little bit of the Syracuse game. Syracuse put up a lot of yards against that defense, and a lot of it seemed like some undisciplined play. Now, I don't know if that's because they were playing Syracuse, and it was a game that was lopsided early, or if that's who they are. If it is, that could create some opportunities.
Where is this defense vulnerable in your eyes, Gene?
Well, it's so tough to say. In the first 2 games, they got up 28-0 in both games, so that it made the other team one-dimensional, so it's really hard to say. But as Ira said, teams were able to move the ball, I think, at least especially Syracuse, up and down the field. They were very vulnerable against the pass last year. They've got some good defensive backs, but as Ira said, undisciplined, so I think there's a way to take advantage of some of that. But I do think also against the run, they lost, you mentioned losing Rankins, who not only was a defensive end, he's a first-round draft pick. He's their best run stuffer on that defensive line. I think it's important to be able to take some advantage of that ability to run, too. So I think you can take advantage of both the run and the pass, but I think especially vulnerable against the pass. Always,
there are keys to the games and players that have to play well for your team to win. In this case, our team, Florida State, going on the road against Louisville. When we come back, we'll preview that on the Warchant.com report. All right, welcome back to the Warchant.com report. And as always, folks, I want to remind you that you can go to the Warchant.com game day page for a complete list of game watching locations throughout the country, no matter where you are. If you want to watch the Noles, go to warchant.com and get the latest information there. Let's talk a little bit about what this would mean for these two teams. Obviously, for Florida State and Louisville, it would be a chance to stay unblemished and have an opportunity to remain there in the top 10 and really have all your dreams and hopes and wishes right there before you to win the Atlantic, play in the ACC Championship, make a college football playoff. But I guess, can FSU lose this game and still make the playoffs?
Oh, I think they can. Now, there are a couple things would have to happen for that. First of all, if they lose, suddenly Louisville's in the thick of the things for the ACC. If they go on, they play, that's not a gimme anymore. They go to Clemson October 1st. If they win that, it's done. You're done. Louisville's going to be the Atlantic representative most likely at that point unless they melt down. And the other thing is you need Clemson. You need Clemson to win out, and you beat Clemson. So under that scenario, I still think to win the ACC, I still think it's a good chance because that schedule's so difficult for FSU. The one-loss ACC champion FSU team, I think, cracks that top 4.
Florida State loses on the road by a touchdown, still have a chance to make the playoffs, so long as Louisville just doesn't stay undefeated.
Or that Louisville doesn't fall apart. I think I agree with that. I think that's true. I think Florida State could lose really any of these next few games and still survive. But I think the problem is the fan base will feel like it's the end of the world. If you lose at Louisville, the fan base will be ready to jump off the cliff.
Sure. But 2002, it's not the same.
But no, you definitely don't. You're not out of anything.
All right, so some keys to the victory. Ira, Gino, either one of you guys here, let's talk a little bit about what you think has to happen for Florida State to win this football game.
How about Dalvin coming back, the old Dalvin? Yeah. And Dalvin has a big game. You take the pressure off of Francois. You take them out. Keep their offense off the field. He runs effectively. I think that would be huge for the team. I'd say, like I said earlier, limit Lamar. I mean, you're not going to shut him down, but Lamar Jackson, hold him around 100 or less. I think that would be a good sign. And then they've gotten off to incredible starts, 28-0 in the first quarter of those first 2 games. Keep it. There's going to be all that emotion with game day and this big game. Keep them in check that first quarter. Keep it close.
Your 3 keys.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with 2 of them because we overlap a little bit. But
I want 3.
The one big one is they just can't have the broken plays on defense. The secondary cannot have those busts and easy scores for Louisville. They have to make Louisville drive the length of the field, make Lamar Jackson make some throws into tight windows, make him convert some third downs, some challenging third downs. They cannot give up the easy score, which they've done a little bit so far. So I think that's one big thing. Another thing is I really want to see how the young kickers handle this stage because this is going to be their first true road game. It's one thing to do it in Orlando in a neutral site where it's mostly Florida State fans against Ole Miss. Ricky Aguayo kicked great, obviously 6 field goals, and then Logan Tyler kicked really well. I want to see when the spotlight's on them on the road, if things aren't going well, I want to see how they handle that. And I don't have a third one, Jeff. I'm sorry. My third one.
I'll chime in.
No turnovers.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll chime in. I think Florida State could overcome some turnovers. You don't want a lot of them, obviously. But for me, I think you got to contain Lamar Jackson in the pocket. I want to make him beat me throwing the football. I understand he's a more able thrower than he has been in his first year at Louisville. He got better in those last few games that he played, in particular in the bowl game. But I think he's a guy that I want to make beat me throwing the football from the pocket with accurate throws, and as you mentioned, to have to go the distance, to not hit me with the big play. And to do that, you're going to really have to be disciplined off the edges. You don't want to just collapse on him. He's a young man that can step up and take off. So some discipline there. And I think, this sounds kind of cliche because it's football, but Florida State has to tackle well when they get their opportunities in space. They got to come up, make a play, get up, get set, and play football. Because, again, Florida State has the better players here, the better athletes, I think, on the whole. Make Louisville earn it. So I guess I'm echoing some of what you had to say. You mentioned Dalvin Cook, Gene, and I'm with you. The next segment, we're going to talk about a player on each side of the ball for FSU that has to be good. I was going to go with Dalvin Cook there, but go ahead and give me a second and somebody on the defensive side.
Dalvin Cook, if he has, if he rushes for 150, 200 yards, what we're used to seeing, I think they win this game at the end of the day. Other side of the ball, I think, imagine if Matthew Thomas has a big game. If you talk about the physicality, and he's a guy that could really throw Lamar Jackson around a little bit, beat him down a little bit, wear him out. I think if he has a big game, that's a very positive for FSU.
Give me a guy.
I'm going to go with young Marcus, the other defensive, one of the young defensive backs. I do like Marcus Lewis a lot.
He's a nice player too. He's got a little what for.
Very physical, and I think he's a guy that can be very physical with those receivers, but also play in space. And he's been playing the star position. I'll be curious if they keep him there, if they move him back to safety. But I think he's a guy that can he's a guy that wants to play with contact. He also can come off the edge as a blitzer. We saw a little bit of that on Saturday, so he's my guy.
Is our guy offensively? I was going to say one of the offensive linemen. Of course, that's the whole Dalvin Cook thing. So one of these guys up front.
I would say that if Alec Eberle, the center, they can't get pressure up the middle. DeAndre Francois is not a tall quarterback. They have to kind of give him a little bit of a pocket. The other thing is, I just think from a receiver standpoint, you'd like to say, Rudolph or Bobo Wilson, those guys have to keep stepping up the way they have, but they have a lot of options at receiver. I think even if one of them didn't play well, they do have a lot of options at receiver.
Some big games around the country this weekend. Let's take a quick look at them. Nebraska's giving 3 to Oregon. I've got Oregon going on the road winning that game. Gentlemen, who you got?
Yeah, I got Oregon. I guess Nebraska's a 3-point favorite. If this game was in November in Nebraska, I'd be all about Nebraska. But in September, when the temperature's going to be normal, Oregon can run that crazy spread. I think they win this.
You got
Oregon as well.
You might be surprised to hear a guy who has an Oklahoma lean say this, but I'd like to see Nebraska matter again. Miami is giving 3.5 in Boone, North Carolina. Lovely Boone. I've gone skiing up there, Sugar Mountain and all that, but I've got Miami winning big at App State.
Doesn't it feel like a game where they're begging you to bet Miami?
Oh, they're begging you to bet, I think. Yeah, Miami. But I'm all in. I think they win big.
You don't roll into Boone. Give me App. Give me App. App State. Yep. Well, they're 3.5 points.
Oh, so you don't have to win the game.
It's a little hook.
Right?
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Michigan State, Notre Dame is always fun. Notre Dame is favored by 7.5. You know Michigan State's had their way with Notre Dame and these point spreads anyhow. Who you got here?
I don't like the hook, Michigan State.
I'm going to take Notre Dame. I was impressed by what they showed in the second half of that game against Texas. I think they may have a real solution at quarterback.
I don't like the hook either. If we're going against the spread, I'm taking Notre Dame.
Yeah,
if we're picking a winner, I'm taking Notre Dame. Either way, I got Notre Dame. All right, Ohio State's given 2 at Oklahoma. Norman's a hard place to go in and win. A little less so these days than it used to be, I would say. And I think Oklahoma's got some problems. I'm taking Ohio State to go on the road and beat the Sooners.
Yeah, I would like to believe Urban Meyer's going to lose this game, but I don't think he is.
He would too. I know that.
And I also think I have a hard time believing Oklahoma's going to start off with a couple losses this early, but I think Ohio State's
Bob's back is against the wall. When something good usually has for Oklahoma, he does it, and I'm not going to go with Urban. So
how about that? I'm the Oklahoma fan, and I'm not taking him, and you two are. I got Ohio State going in there and winning comfortably, guys.
No, I got Ohio State.
No, you did? Okay, I'm sorry. I had it wrong. When we come back, we'll give you our picks for the actual game that matters, Florida State and Louisville. That's next on the Warchant.com report. Wrapping it up on the Warchant.com report, and we'll do so with our predicted winner of this game, number 10, Louisville, hosting number 2, Florida State. And does it happen for the Noles? Tough road test in the ACC against a program on the rise in Louisville. Bobby Petrino can really coach, and he's also willing to take any transfer from anywhere, no matter what they've done. So they'll be good for the foreseeable future. Your thoughts on this one, though?
I've had this game circled for a while. Is what I'm worried about, and I'm going to go against the Noles on this one. I'm going to go 32-27 Louisville in this one. I'll tell you why, because too many red flags. There's the Dalvin Cook, we don't know if he's there, the breakdown secondary that I mentioned, the offensive line has been inconsistent, and they're going to be fired up for this game. I think FSU was going to lose one of those early games before Clemson. It just seems the most likely to me.
Gene Williams picking against your beloved Noles. You should ask for his Nole card. Ira, your thoughts?
I actually thought about that a little bit. I think Louisville's a good team, and I think it's going to be a challenging spot for Florida State. I think Florida State's offense is going to be too much for Louisville's defense, though. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I like Florida State to win 45-31. I think it's going to be I'm not sure what the total is, but I would probably pound the over.
I like Florida State to score a lot of points as well, and I understand why, Gene, that you would be inclined to take Louisville, but I didn't either because I think Florida State's offensive and defensive lines will win this football game for them. Lamar Jackson's too good to hold down for the entirety of a game. There may be some busts and some confusion there, but I got Florida State winning 38-24 in a high-scoring affair on the road, and I think at this point we would all take that. And when that happens and we come back and do the next Warchant.com report, we can rip him for the whole first segment. Won't that be fun?
That'll be good.
And here's the best part about that.
And I hope you can.
Right. I was going to say the best part about it is if it doesn't happen and he turns out to be right, he can't spend the entire segment ripping us. Yeah, he's not going to do that. No. So, all right. So 2 of the 3 of us have Florida State winning, Florida State losing according to Gene Williams. And if that happens, do you still have Florida State winning the Atlantic Division?
Yes, I do. They will defeat Clemson.
When Gene puts up his matchup analysis on Friday or Thursday or Friday and has that prediction on there, you want to have a subscription to Warchant to see the message boards.
They're not happy.
They go after him.
Do they get after you?
They don't like that. How dare I pick FSU?
They could be playing the 86 Bears and Gene picked the Bears.
Well, after all that, the forum you've provided for these many years, just to turn their back on you.
Yeah, in a second.
All right, for Ira Schoffel and Gene Williams, Ryan Kelly holding the camera down back there. I'm Jeff Cameron. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on the Warchant.com report.
Like our videos? Then you'll love being a premium member of Warchant.com with exclusive access to breaking news, insight, and analysis from the best on the beat. Enter the promo code WARCHANT30 on our sign-up page and get exclusive premium access for free for the next 30 days. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.